You're watching The Legal Breakdown. Glenn, we just got some major breaking news as far as Jack Smith and Donald Trump's ongoing prosecutions in federal court are concerned, both the D.C. prosecution and the classified documents case down in Florida. Can you explain what just happened?
So, Brian, Jack Smith just filed a motion to dismiss both of Donald Trump's federal prosecutions, the one in Washington, D.C., for his attempt to overturn the results of the 2020 election, and the one down in Florida where Donald Trump was indicted for unlawfully retaining classified documents, obstructing justice, and violating our nation's espionage laws. I am struggling as a rule of law guy my whole life not to say, may the rule of law rest in peace, because I don't know if it's fair or accurate to say the rule of law is dead or it's terminal, it's on life support, or maybe, just maybe, it was just put into hibernation. And I actually think hibernation is the most accurate way to frame what just happened with these two motions to dismiss. So here is essentially why Jack Smith just filed these motions to dismiss. It's important to know that there's no law, there is no precedent, in other words, no appellate court opinion or Supreme Court opinion, and there is no constitutional provision that says you can't prosecute a sitting criminal president. What there is, Brian, is an opinion from a unit called the Office of Legal Counsel, OLC, inside the Department of Justice. And that office has twice rendered the legal opinion, once back during the Watergate era and once during the Bill Clinton impeachment era, circa 2000 or so, twice issued the opinion that they believe it is unlawful and unconstitutional to prosecute a sitting president. But mind you, that doesn't have the effect or the force of law. It is simply a legal opinion rendered by the Department of Justice itself. Jack Smith, in his motion to dismiss, just said, I, as a Department of Justice prosecutor, even though I am a special counsel, I still labor under DOJ guidelines and policies and rules and procedures. Therefore, I am required to move to dismiss these cases because Donald Trump presumably will be sworn in as president on January 20th, and therefore these federal criminal prosecutions cannot be up and running during his time as president. But let me go to the hibernation part, because the two most important words in Jack Smith's motion to dismiss are the words without prejudice. What does that mean? We look for our points of light amidst the darkness where we can find them, and this may be a very dim point of light, but a point of light nonetheless. Without prejudice means that these prosecutions can be rebrought, can be reindicted, can be revived in the future once Donald Trump is no longer a sitting president. So that is what Jack Smith is holding fast to. And let me read what is, I think, the final or the next to the last line in his motion to dismiss that he filed in D.C. He says that immunity from prosecution for a sitting president would not preclude such prosecution once the president's term is over or he is otherwise removed from office by resignation or impeachment. That's Jack Smith quoting one of the OLC opinions. So the only glimmer of hope we have that Donald Trump will ever see justice come for the crimes he committed against the people of the United States in both federal cases will be once he leaves office. It feels like these cases will then at least have the opportunity to be reindicted and jump-started, and then maybe Donald Trump will be held accountable for his crimes.
Glenn, prior to this moment right here that we're in, you and I had discussed the prospect of Jack Smith either dismissing these cases outright, which is what he's moving to do right now, or just leaving them as is, allowing Donald Trump's DOJ to come in and corruptly dismiss them, which would allow down the line a Democratic Department of Justice or Attorney General or pro-democracy Attorney General seeking to pick up where Jack Smith left off and say, look, these cases were corruptly dismissed. Now we can, continue on with the prosecution. Why do you think Jack Smith opted to voluntarily dismiss these cases instead of allowing the Trump team to dismiss them, which again would give a predicate to a future DOJ to pick up where he left off?
He addresses that in his motion to dismiss. He discusses how perhaps these cases could have just been stayed or paused while Donald Trump was president. And he said the Office of Legal Counsel's opinion on that was that a criminal prosecution, even paused or stayed until the president left office, would so encumber the, what needs to be unfettered operations of the President of the United States that the Office of Legal Counsel deems it to be unlawful and unconstitutional. Jack Smith had nowhere to turn. There was no cover to try to keep these cases, no legal cover or regulatory cover or procedural cover to keep these cases alive, even if on pause while Donald Trump is president. So I have a hard time faulting Jack Smith for choosing the only legal course that was available to him, according to the Department of Justice and the Office of Legal Counsel. So that is, I think, why he was left with the only option of moving to dismiss without prejudice, which at least has some hope of the cases being rebrought in the future. And we can talk about what the odds are that if a case was rebrought once Donald Trump leaves office, whether it would be successful or not.
Well, to that point, I would presume it's not very high odds, but I'll leave that to you to let me know what you think.
So here's what I think, Brian. So the statute of limitations is basically a time limit, right? A time limit within which the prosecution has to prosecute somebody for their crimes. Ordinarily, the federal law has a 5-year statute of limitations. So from the time a crime is committed, the offender has to be prosecuted within 5 years, or the case times out, right? The time to bring the case expires and it can never be brought. And so that's why one of the challenges will be, if Donald Trump serves 4 years in office and then is no longer president thereafter, well, the crimes that he committed would be far more than 5 years old. So here is what Jack Smith is banking on. Now, he doesn't come right out and say it, but everything in the motion to dismiss screams that this will be our position in the future. Because the law, as interpreted by the Office of Legal Counsel, the Constitution envisions that a president can't be prosecuted while in office, even if the case is on pause. Jack Smith will say, therefore, the statute of limitations also pauses. It should not expire because there was no lawful vehicle to bring this prosecution against Donald Trump while he was in office. So that's going to be the argument that I predict any future prosecutor and Department of Justice who, again, cared about the rule of law and holding a criminal president accountable. That's the position they are likely to take. But let me make the devil's advocate argument now, because Donald Trump's attorneys will march into court and say, wait a minute, there is no law saying a president can't be prosecuted in office. That's just a Department of Justice opinion, and it's not worth the paper it's written on. Therefore, Your Honor, the statute of limitations, which is a law, rules, governs, and wins the day, and you cannot bring this prosecution anew against Donald Trump. I'll tell you, I don't know where I would place my maximum $1 bet on which way a judge would rule on that argument.
Glenn, let's finish off with this. We see the asymmetry at play between how Republicans treat the justice system versus how Democrats treat the justice system. How if the tables were turned, you and I both know that a Attorney General Pam Bondi would not say, oh, well, the OLC memo says this, even though it's completely unenforceable, even though there's no teeth, it says this, and so we just have to lay down our arms and just completely defer to what the Office of Legal Counsel says. And yet the fact is that Democrats will do it without any pushback. I mean, that's just how it works. And so I'm wondering if you think that there's a structural disadvantage at play here in the fact that Republicans will often just completely discard anything that doesn't already confirm the position that they're trying to take, whereas they know full well that Democrats will never do that, that we will always allow ourselves to be hamstrung by the obstacles in place that only one party actually takes seriously.
Yeah, the Democrats will forever be fighting a losing battle because they will play by the rules, and they will do so consistently. And the Republicans will ignore the rules and violate the rules when it works to their advantage. I think the most, obvious and deceitful example of that is when Mitch McConnell, when President Obama appoints a Supreme Court or nominates a Supreme Court justice, Merrick Garland, Mitch McConnell says, you can't do that within the last year of your presidency. And then he crams through a Donald Trump Supreme Court nominee, Amy Coney Barrett, a couple of weeks before the election? Yep. I don't remember the
votes
exact
were already
timing.
being cast. And in fact, we have other examples like that too, where, when Republicans want to be able to put something in the reconciliation bill and the parliamentarian says no, they'll replace the parliamentarian, whereas Democrats say, oh, well, the parliamentarian's word is sacrosanct, and so we couldn't possibly do that. I think that so long as Democrats continue to burden ourselves by making sure this asymmetry persists, we're going to be on the losing end of this battle every single time. So I don't know what that looks like moving forward, but I do know that keeping that asymmetry in place is just a recipe for disaster for the left.
Brian, the reality is we don't fight fire with fire. We don't even fight fire with water. We fight it with paper and kindling. And we lose every time.
Yeah. Well, we will continue to keep on top of whatever happens in this realm, as even though it looks like right now there is no good news on the horizon. With that said, for those who are looking to stay in this fight with us in whatever way we can be in it, please make sure to subscribe. The links to both of our channels are right here on this screen. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
And I'm Glenn Kirshner.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown.